Welcome everybody for our first community call for 2025 here. So I think I've posted in Discord, but the first thing we're going to start off with today is around like highlighting the metrics over the last year. So from the start of 2024 to the end of it, so a year in review. And then I also will include a section on our current metrics, so where we're at in the first 2 weeks here. And then where a lot of our kind of attention and a lot of our decision making, I think, will be filtered through this idea that we're going to have 2025 North Star metrics. So making sure that some of the kind of big decisions and direction that Research Hub Foundation and I guess Research Hub take are going to be filtered through, are these going to improve some of these North Star metrics? So we can get started with sharing that screen. All right, everyone can see my screen, yeah?
Yeah, looking good.
Okay, awesome. So we'll get started actually over here. So this is the year in review. So I posted this in Discord, but for those that weren't in Discord and I want to see this on the recording afterwards, want to show some of the really incredible progress over the course of 2024. So at the start of the year, looking at primarily social metrics here and also our peer reviews. The first column will be January 2024, and then the second column will be just before the turn of the new year. So you'll see all of our metrics regarding peer reviews, our Twitter profiles, our X profiles, our LinkedIn profiles, Discord, and YouTube, and then the percent change over the course of the year. So we're really, really, really proud of some of these numbers, and especially those who were in the community back at the beginning of 2024 and before that, I think can evidently see that there was some pretty tremendous growth over the course of 2024. So yeah, we're particularly proud of these. And then I also want to highlight where we are currently. So these are the most updated numbers, and you can juxtapose this present column with the December 30th, 2024 column to see where we've been or where we've gone over the last 2 weeks, so since the start of the year. And then you can see the percent change in all of these metrics over that period of time, year to date. So again, 2 weeks. So these numbers are all, I think, very promising. So to have something in the realm of like a few percent up to like 8, 9, almost 10% change week over week on some of these is, I think, really, really stellar. And then last point we'll make is around the 2025 North Star metrics. So we have a handful of these, and we made these quite stretch goals because last year we actually hit, majority of the metrics that we had set out for. So we're going to make these particularly difficult this year. And so we're going to aim for about 20,000 peer reviews, about 500 manuscript submissions into the new Research Hub journal, and we have a few pieces of scaffold that are hopefully going to help drive a lot more attention and submissions into this. Volume running through the funding feature, one of the big features that's going to be worked on in 2025 that Research Hub Inc. has presented about is the funding feature. So revamping this and making it more robust, and we want to drive quite a bit of volume going through that to help fund scientific projects. Then following that, the X followers. So we want to hit about 150,000 for the year, as well as LinkedIn followers, where a lot of our scientific-based audience is housed. We'll be aiming for 10,000 followers here. So this will be kind of a balance of driving social metrics and engagement, as well as in-app kind of functions such as the peer reviews, the journal, and the funding feature to make sure that we're actually bootstrapping like a network effect and focused on generating some revenue in from the platform. So I'll pause right there. Pat or Tyler, not sure if you guys want to add anything to that, but can also field questions in the Q&A session as well.
I think it's been a great year. We're still pre-product market fit. Still trying to figure out how to monetize paid peer review, but it's clear that there's a demand for it and that, we can scale it up with outflows of tokens. So I think this year needs to be about figuring out how to monetize it, whether that's through like the Research Hub Journal or maybe a funding feature. But yeah, in general, it seems like just the quality of the community has like risen tremendously. And even just anecdotally, like I think our editorial team now has more established academics, and I'm getting like inbound DMs from like pretty qualified folks who are interested in what we're building. So yeah, I think we're headed in the right direction, but still a lot of work to do in order to turn this into something sustainable long term.
Yeah, definitely. Just feel like the caliber has increased quite a bit from the last year. And one thing too to note, so Pat mentioned like around the idea of like how do we leverage these peer reviews, and it actually I think it fits into both of point number 2 and 3, which is submissions into the journal are going to need reviewers to step in there and actually like help push along the submissions quicker, making sure the quality and the bar of the reviews is high. But even funding, pre-registrations themselves also need to be peer reviewed. These are also almost like, manuscripts in and of themselves. So there's a place for the peer reviews to plug into both of these things and provide some value there. I mean, I'm seeing some stuff in the, okay, cool. So yeah, maybe we'll call it there for the metrics. I think everyone's got a good idea now of the direction for the coming year. And so yeah, going forward, we'll probably begin to do a few announcements. So the first one is what we're on right now, which is Zoom. So we're going to migrate some of the Discord, or we're going to migrate the Discord community calls over into Zoom over here. And so there's a couple reasons for this, and I mentioned them in the Discord as well. But one of them is around the idea of like being able to easily record these. One of the big feedbacks we'd gotten from the community is, hey, we're interested in, being involved and like hearing about the community during hearing the community calls, but I can't make it during that time. That's the nature of, I think, us being a global community and group of people. So it allows us to record, but also it gives us a venue where anybody can come in. It doesn't have to be someone who's made their way into our Discord server. So that opens the door for external people, as well as Zoom is just kind of like the go-to venue for a lot of scientists. So I think this is meeting the scientist as well, kind of halfway, such that they don't have to, go maneuver, download Discord, which is an app that they're not usually familiar with. So that'd be one big one. Another one, which is there's been a change to the distribution from the upvotes. So this is a change from 1 RSC to 0.01 RSC for receiving an upvote. And this is just because of, by nature, the appreciation of the token has made it such that, that amount distributed for an upvote makes a little bit less sense being 1 RSC. And then additionally, this happened about a couple weeks ago or a few weeks ago, but the withdrawal limit has been reduced from 500 RSC to 150 RSC. So yeah, shout out to Pat and Tyler. This was a big one from the community, again, because of the appreciation of the token, making it a more reasonable and realistic amount to have as a minimum threshold there. Okay, great. And then Pat and Tyler, feel free to like hop in or add any context to anything I'm saying over here.
Yeah, maybe just one small point too, just for the audience. I think the chat is disabled, but you should be able to ask through the Q&A. So if you do have questions or you want us to go through stuff, maybe put it in the Q&A.
Yeah, please. Okay, cool. So yeah, so those are a couple of the big changes. So another one that was, I think, a big feedback from our audience, especially last year. So at the end of the year, we asked, hey, what can we improve on going forward into 2025? And a handful of people had mentioned this idea of really easing like the onboarding and offboarding experience for ResearchCoin. So on the platform, there's, a multitude of steps that users need to go through to either offboard the research coin they've earned, say as a peer reviewer, or to onboard research coin, which is something that's going to be really important for us as we begin to like think about revenue generation and monetization going into 2025. And so I wanted to, without speaking too much in details, we've been working over the last month or so with one of our open source developers and has been focused primarily on implementation of on-chain kit, which is a really great service that's developed by the base team to allow for like really, really, really ease of onboarding and using. So there'll be things like, kind of one-click purchases or, Paymaster, which allows us to cover some of the gas fees for our users. So they don't have to go then buy Ethereum in order to pay for a transaction fee for something they've earned. So there's a few of these things. They're going to be implemented first on the ResearchHub Foundation website. So just keep your eyes open on the Foundation website first to see what this will look like. And then, hopefully to be added into the ResearchHub web app after that. Okay, cool. So another one here is we've onboarded 2 new people to our editor team. We're very, very excited to be scaling kind of like our editorial team with some really high quality, great members. So 2 of our new editors that have joined are Assistant Professor Rustlin Rust, who is an assistant professor at USC, and Associate Professor Scott Nelson. So we're really excited to kind of scale the caliber of some of our editorial team, making sure we're covering a bunch of different fields of expertise as well too. So again, and I want to maybe just mention and I've heard from a few people now, this idea that as a kind of an image or a brand, ResearchHub has like an air of credibility behind it. And so we definitely want to, we're glad that that image is kind of, peeping through, and we want to really uphold that. And so we're very, I think, proud, I can speak for everyone here, that we have that, sense of credibility behind our name. And we want to make sure that the infrastructure that we have built out, the people that are affiliated with us, the group of people that we're going to work with or collaborate with also have kind of that image in place too. Because at the end of the day, scientists come from a very like skeptical, they're skeptical by nature. And so having credibility there helps strengthen kind of that desire for scientists to come and use our platform. Okay. So just a couple more things here. I know it's going to be like a long, just like FYIs, but another one here is we're going to be focusing on a couple things going forward into the year. One of them from that directly ties into the web app is really scaling up our outreach efforts. So one of the more exciting things I think we're working on is working on automations and ways to easily outreach to authors in order to help drive attention to the Research Hub journal. So we're working with Dami, who actually might be here in the audience, who's built out some scripts that help us gather some authors' emails for authors who have submitted preprints recently, and help with automating out some emails that will go out to those people to direct them towards the Research Hub journal. So we're really excited to see the outcome of that. And the idea here and how this pertains to like, the rest of the non-science community is, ability to drive revenue to these things, one, makes it such that the revenue can offset the burn, which means that we'll not be default dead. So this is kind of a term where if you're a startup and you're burning kind of money, then you're by default dead until you can generate money that offsets that. And so this will help tremendously in those efforts. So that's one big thing on the outreach. On the foundation side of things, and we're going to lean into this, I think, quite aggressively going into 2025, is this intersection of AI and science. And as some of you may have seen, we've begun working with Yes No Error, which is a project that was bootstrapped just a few weeks ago, but comes from another founder. Matt is a strong Silicon Valley, has a strong Silicon Valley background, has been here for, I think, the last like 15 years or something like that. And we're going to focus a lot of our energy on using AI to enhance peer review, to catch errors in manuscripts or preprints that are being submitted. And to do that, we're taking some foundational models and building on top of those with some of our services. So in the next week or so, you should see a pre-registration going live from us. It'll outline a lot of details on how we want to develop this going forward. Should be at least a handful of months project, but the outcome of it should be really exciting. It'll have a lot of open source data, as well as potentially a tool that will maybe help some of our users during the submission process. So yeah, that's, I would say, a good majority of the announcements we have here. And then maybe the last one I'll mention too is, we've had quite a bit of really good conversations, some initiated, from us reaching out to others, but also vice versa, some other really high quality scientists reaching out to us that are just interested in Research Hub. It seems like people really value the mission that we have and value like the vision. And so there's a lot of higher profile scientists that want to get involved in some capacity with us. And so we're actively working on a way to kind of formally establish a place where they can work with us via the Research Hub journal or through Research Hub as a platform as well too. So I just wanted to highlight that because we are seeing a lot of interest on a lot of fronts, from like the traditional academics and to people who want to come and like collaborate with us or partner with us and things like that. Okay, announcement rant is over. Pat and Tyler, is there anything else that I missed that you guys want to highlight to the community, maybe signal something to them going into 2025 of what we want to focus on?
No, I think that was pretty good. Nothing in particular comes to mind for me.
Yeah, same for me here, Jeff. I think you nailed it.
Okay, cool. All right. So that's kind of it with some of the bigger announcements. And I want to take another, say, 15, 20 minutes here to really focus on probably the biggest feedback we've gotten from the community, which is around like community engagement, as well as like, more readily distributing some of like the kind of information around if changes are implemented on the platform, what things are being worked on quarter over quarter or week over week rather, and things like that. So I want to, and unfortunately the chat is not working here, but if anyone wants to include in maybe the Q&A, which is where you guys can send messages, some of these ideas, as well as I think we can pull some people up here too. So we can always do that as well. But the idea is, we want to try to improve communication going forward into 2025. And so one of the things we've done where I think we've been lacking over the last, few months or year has been around support tickets. So we've onboarded Cole, who's actually one of our editors, to help step in on support tickets as well as author claims. So if you're a new author and you verified your identity and you go to claim authorship on some papers, you should hopefully see these have been processed a ton quicker, as well as support tickets. The backlog that we have has been kind of chipped away at. So if you've had a support ticket opened, then you've probably also noticed that these have been much more readily being answered. So I want to give just a really big shout out to Cole, who's very diligent and thorough with going through some of these things, as well as we're going to have a couple of long-term community members stepping in as more like a community manager type of role. So this is really just step in on Discord and make sure questions are being answered. If people need help, they're directing them to the right places, and just generally engaging with the various types of community members. So that could be people in the token talk to discuss more around the crypto side of things, or support tickets, or just general questions, routing people to, the right group of folks for like if they want to come partner with us, things like that. And so maybe one question I wanted to throw out to the rest of the community here is, one thing that we need to do better of, I think, is distributing information out through whatever medium makes sense. And so I wanted to throw it out there to the community on what medium makes sense here for you all when you want to receive information. So does this look like Discord announcements to you? Does this look like, bi-weekly or every 2 week product notes that used to go out? Does this look like monthly emails? Does this look like a little, like, I think they call it like a toaster notification, or like an in-app banner when some change in the ResearchHub platform happens? What does that look like to you guys, where it actually will make its way to you and you'll absorb that information? And feel free to like raise your hand. We can pull you up here as well as get you on the Q&A. So let me see. So let's pull up Edwin over here. Edwin, go for it.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was thinking about it, every 2 weeks, the product updates. I don't think we've had any complaints about that. I think the 2 times we've had serious complaints were when we changed the reward algorithm on the site without telling people on the site that we were changing it. And just like not getting responses, which you said we fixed. So I think what would make sense is like if there's like a change to any kind of reward algorithm, maybe something like a notification on site, because people who actually depend on it would see that. But otherwise, I think the product updates that Tyler was drafting every 2 weeks, I didn't have any problems with that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Edwin. Tyler, I know I was seeing if I can invite you as a panelist if that changes okay, yeah, there we go. So what Edwin had mentioned was the idea of like these product updates. It seemed like people were really resonating with them. I know it takes like a little bit of time, and maybe we can figure out a way where like if we can help you guys get those out in a way that doesn't like bog you down. But the idea that any changes to the platform itself, maybe a little banner or notification to say, hey, by the way, withdrawal limit has been changed. It went from 500 to 150, because that kind of, if there's, I think the change is noticed pretty much the day that the change is made, versus some other things can wait like 2 weeks for like a product update.
Yeah, I love it. We should get back to them. So we have another sync coming up this week. So I'll plan to put out the product sync notes, like these bi-weekly ones, on next Monday. And we'll just keep that as regular cadence. And then I think when we do bigger announcements like reward algorithm changes or new product launches that are like, really big stuff, I'll try and include like a quick, maybe like 1 to 2 minute video where I'll just walk through the new things like over video and voice. Johnny's given some feedback that it's been kind of helpful for people to like see a face and hear it. So yeah, we can definitely do this for sure.
Yeah, perfect. And then, yeah, maybe something like small too. Like I remember you have like a banner, there's a little carousel sometimes on like the banner that you've created. So maybe something, like if there's any smaller changes on the product, just being able to signal something small there that probably doesn't require a beefy, like big product update could be nice too, I think, for people.
Agreed. Yeah, toast notifications. We can try and get more of those going too.
Yeah. That's what they're called. I'm seeing from the Q&A session here from Javier. So Jeff, I think having notifications or news on Research Hub is probably the best long term since it can increase traffic to the website and they can be exposed to other information we might want to expose them to. And it probably makes it easier for them to stay there doing something. It also makes the website project look more complete as it advances. So that's a good angle as well, which is the idea that in theory, this is driving people back to the website just to even receive the notification. And so that also can kind of connect the dots with some of the other features if they want to dabble with them.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, thanks, Javier. That's a good point. Mark that as answered live. Okay, cool. Yeah, any other like ideas around like, so to recap this, it seems like continue with like those like product notes and then any like changes that would happen maybe to the reward algorithm or something like that, just like a little in-app notification somewhere that might help notify users if that's the case. And then from the foundation side, we can signal these things also on like Discord and other communication channels, but with like links that take them back into researchhub.com. Okay, very cool. So that would be, yeah, one thing. One other thing that we talked about regarding, I think, more the community is we want to focus a little bit, at least on the foundation, around implementing some of these kind of intersection of AI and science. And we do have a big non-science community as well too. And we want to see what are some maybe potential features that might evolve into researchhub.com where we can plug in some of these new like AI LLM tools to help, get the non-scientists more things to do on the platform. So I know some of the things that are really exciting are staking, but obviously this will take some time to implement. And so one of the things we were discussing is this idea of like a Grok, if everyone's using X, like a Grok style LLM tool for just the scientific manuscripts. So it'll be a little button that you could click on and it'll generate you like a summary and you can engage with this thing. And then it kind of tears down the walls of there's this, really, really formal manuscript that, to be frank, a lot of scientists don't even know how to read and refining that down in a digestible way. So curious to hear people's thoughts on that, especially from the non-science audience. But yeah, Edwin.
I think that's a great idea. Another thing I was thinking about, and I haven't thought about feasibility at all, but just wanted to throw out something, is the idea of like a store for agents so that people can come up with better and better ways to like engage with the data on the site. Yeah, that'd be another thing.
Yeah, Edwin, are you thinking more of like just having data from the website being more accessible? So kind of like through like a better API? Is that something you're thinking about?
Not that as much. So like just for context, because of what I do, like I've had people building different types of agents reach out to me and be like, oh, I want to tap into Research Hub's brand essentially to create this agent that has this utility and kind of use it to launch it. So my whole thing I'm thinking is like people are going to build these agents. We can do like Grok and have it be our own kind of the base one, but people are going to build these things. They're going to want to interact with like the papers on the site in different ways. So it would make sense if that's like something that, and they're probably going to want to tokenize them as well, right? Even though they're not doing much more than they're going to want to tokenize them. So that could be something where like ordinary people could see how effective a given agent is on our site, and that could be a basis for speculation. And that would have nothing to do with whether they're scientists or not. I'm not saying everything non-scientists do on the site have to be about speculation. It could just be about entertainment. Like I had somebody hit me up talking about they're generating an agent that could do 2-minute like summaries of papers. And that could be something that people would potentially be interested in. But I think just like having a way where like anybody, and there would have to be a lot more like security, I understand this, but can build an agent and have it be able to interface with Research Hub and have it be tokenized. I think that's something that ordinary people would be willing to interact with if we're going the agent route.
Yeah, that's really exciting, Edwin, and good to know that like people are like it's not just hearsay; it's quite literally people who are approaching you, who are requesting, asking about something like this, and maybe Tyler, you might know about this a little bit better than me, but is really what this is like a better API where people can just plug into like the available data that Research Hub has to offer, such that they can then use that information to like make sure that the agents have the right data that they're working with. Because from what I understand is A lot of these AI tools just are like a series of API calls where they're like, hey, we're going to go do an API call for O1 and then one from this database and one from this one, and then make sure we have all the information to do our job.
Yeah, it's honestly a pretty cool concept to think about how we can let AI like interact with our site. And everything's CC0, so they should be able to interact with it, grab it, and do anything they want with it, including like derivatives. It's kind of curious, like it makes me think, how can we get them to be able to use it on our site, but then also have it come back to our site where we get to like have their content be generated and shown somewhere here, as opposed to them taking it and making a derivative somewhere else. But yeah, it's an interesting question. I'll probably have to talk to Kobe and the guys about how accessible the API is. But we are making a lot of changes to the web app in like Q1. So it's a good timing actually to think about this.
For what we need.
Go ahead.
This seems like something that could be MVP'd, for instance, like a layman's summary of papers. Folks could like create those summaries and just post them as comments. So I think probably what we should do is folks who are like excited about this, like encourage them to engage with the site in its current form. And if we start to see like some of these like automated sort of pieces of content get traction, then we can build out infrastructure, to make it easier for anybody to launch them. But yeah, I think it's very possible to basically use these LLMs in an effective way on ResearchHub right now in like a manual MVP fashion, and then build stuff out once we start to see traction happen.
Yeah, that would be perfect. That's one thing that we've done with like the AI peer reviews that Dami created, which is we're just manually kind of posting them through the Foundation account, seeing kind of what the feedback is, seeing how people respond to it, seeing if they're useful when juxtaposed against the other human reviews. So those are some things that I think the equivalent of that for some of these agents would be really cool. And maybe one note to make related to Edwin's point is, I know we're going to be onboarding a little bit more like Web3 resources. So the idea that these agents might actually just be able to help drive revenue by like opening grants or bounties and things like that. Again, this is not short term, but like in the long run or medium term, I think it'd be really exciting because it can be a lot more of these things than humans. And so if it's a very possible there's a world where these are revenue drivers. Maybe Dami, and then we'll go back to you, Edwin.
Yeah. So can you guys hear me well?
Yep.
Yeah. So 2 points. One is what Edwin mentions about this agent and sort of custom AI. So I actually have some of this framework figured out the other days, and then it's basically just doing API call as you mentioned, Jeff, and each of them have different personalities, different capabilities, and all of this stuff. Okay, so is the voice okay now?
It's good on my side.
Good on my side too.
Okay then. All right then. So yeah, so it's basically a kind of a website where you see all these different cards. You can tune a little bit on the customized AI, and then what they do with the research platform is going to, call sort of a. For now, it's scraping because it doesn't have like an API, request endpoints. But in the future, what we can do is that we can have, say, researchhub.com/API/V1 agent or whatever. And then these agents are sending, API call through the HTTP, right? And then basically you get those informations on the platform as well. So the backend of researchhub.com will basically have these informations because before it giving anything to the agent, it sort of receives whatever the agent is, generating. So if we build this agent system ourselves, we can ensure that whatever it generates, it can send it back to ResearchHub, and then ResearchHub can present it on the platform in some way or another. Just like the information is already in the back end, so ResearchHub can do whatever it needs to do to surface it on the front end, right? So I guess there's no problem there. And it's because HTTP is like a separated area. It's not directly in the platforms. It's not like the HTTPS research. It's pretty safe because it's independent. It's just like a get and post request. So that's pretty easy to do because you can basically isolate, the information to only happen over there. And then we can do a lot of things like science stuff or non-science stuff, like just chatting with, with whatever text available, or just, understanding what's the latest stuff here and so on and so on. So anything can work there. So I think we can do some MVP without actually need to changing anything on the platforms. We just decide, okay, what kind of information that we want to put into that API, create a bit of schema. It's like, okay, just topics or whatever in the feed, top 100. So it's not too much effort. and things like that. And then we can play around. Because I already have this sort of a different custom agent framework. And then they can actually, send API call to anywhere.
Yeah, that's actually really good to know, Dami. So in essence, we can MVP this. And then I guess one of my questions would be, again, looking at it through the filter of like the 2025 North Star metrics, which is, will this help generate like some form of revenue? Will this help maybe improve some of like the science that's being done? So at the end of the day, we don't want to just like have things going, but like not improve science. Like, will it improve science communication to, non-scientists? Will it help bring non-scientists as weekly active contributors to the platform? So if we feel like some of those ticks are being, some of those checkboxes are being ticked, then I think this, could be something worthwhile.
Yeah, I agree. And then one of the most straightforward one is to have sort of our peer reviewer to have their own AI pet. So they sort of can create this AI that peer review for, $5-10, but they now can do like 20, 30 in a week compared to, doing themselves, because if they do it themselves, they can only have say 1 or 2 peer review per week, right? But then if they have an AI pet based on their own expertise, they train the AI in their, a framework of thinking and all those stuff. So they just basically need to teach the AI, becoming the mentor. And then the AI sort of help them do the job, to do the AI peer review job that we do on the platform. It sort of generates revenue because to groom the AI, they need to pay some, basic service value. They cannot just use the AI for free because they need to sort of feed the AI and all this stuff. It then also trying to hit the 20,000, peer review, right? Because we're having a big number. We need to grow the number of peer reviewer, but also the, amplify the capability of each peer reviewer because the time that they have is limited.
Yeah, that adds up to me across a lot of those fronts. Tyler, I had seen you unmute. Do you have anything to say about the Dami stuff? And then after we can go to Edwin.
Yeah, just a quick note too. I think you have the right perspective, Jeff, of like if we MVP this, just keeping an eye on does it generate revenue or does it get users? And then if it meets one of those two criteria, like is it actually driving good science? Because I could see a bad scenario where if the peer reviews are like okay, maybe BB plus, and we're getting a huge supply of them, we wouldn't want the platform to be overrun by like mostly AI peer reviews unless they were really good. And then it's like, okay, if it is mostly AI peer reviews, then is that really a good North Star? Because then it's just like token generation as opposed to like real users. So just like keeping these things in our head as we try it. I still think it's very good to try it, but just to mention it.
Yeah, appreciate that, Tyler. But yeah, always looking through those lenses, I think is really important for all of us. Yeah, Edwin.
Another thing to kind of, keep not actionable, but everybody should be kind of aware of. There are going to be a bunch of these things. They're going to be tokenized. And the main thing they're going to want is liquidity. So as we think of our designs, I think we should all be aware of that fact.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's going to be like a really interesting world very soon. Like it's kind of happening already. So
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's really exciting. So we have some stuff in the Q&A as well too. So Javier said, I think is an amazing idea in general. One thing I wonder is if we should provide this summary already by default so it is more obvious to people this tool exists and what it provides. Yeah, that's like something I think we can always dabble with and make sure that like kind of on the back end, I think the summary is working good and everything looks fine. And then, we can talk with maybe Kobe and then the rest of the team to see if that's something important they want to incorporate. Yeah, Tyler?
Yeah, one question here. So here, I was thinking about this with Grok, and I know Grok has like the summarize this tweet. And I found it to be like low to medium useful. So I'd be curious if you've tried this for papers, if you found it to be really useful, or if there's like a specific prompting strategy where if you use it for papers in this way, it becomes really helpful. Just because I know like when I was reading papers in my PhD, like you might read, in like an average reading session, you might read like mostly abstracts, a couple introductions, a couple discussions, and then like very few, if any, full papers. So trying to extract like what is a good summarization for like a PhD student, and early versus late career is very different. And then also like a lay person. So trying to figure out like, do we need 3 AI strategies? Is there one fit all? And then are any of them actually like truly useful? Because I haven't seen like a perfect case, but I haven't tried it too much, to be fair.
So to chime in here, one use case which I do think is really cool is there's this website, it's called Scholarcy. And so what they do is less like trying to translate like the findings into layperson, grad student, PI levels of understanding. they will like go into the results and pull out like the evidence that supports the claims within the paper. So they kind of like boil a paper down to like bullet point claims and then back up those claims with data, like context of the data, like how strong is the effect size, stuff like that. So that use case I find very helpful. But aside from that, Tyler, I kind of agree with you. Like even like the like biggest companies using these AI summaries, they're like low to medium helpful. And I'm sure that will improve in the future. But yeah, just the current state of it, to my understanding, is kind of like low to medium helpful.
It makes a lot of sense. It actually would be pretty cool to pull out like, I mean, even for methods, like sometimes when I was going through a paper, like there's a very specific method that you typically track throughout your PhD. And so trying to see if like this paper uses that at a glance or like has the results like you're saying, there probably are nuggets of gold that we could pull out if we do it right.
Yeah, I think one thing that would be great here is just like, am I a layman? Am I a PhD student? Am I a postdoc? Or am I a professor? It's like, and then depending on what you are, there's like a prompt that's slightly different where it's like the layman is like, just pull me out the basic like 3 points of this whole thing. Maybe like even the abstract is a little convoluted. I don't quite understand it. But for like a grad student, I can just glance at the abstract if I wanted that, right? So like depending on where you are in your like your scientific career, then like the prompt is slightly different. Because I think like manuscript, the difference with like a Twitter post, doing grok on like a Twitter post is that's not like some really complex, highly detailed like piece of information usually. So it's like the delta between the generalities made in the post and then the generalities made in the summary, they're so close. But here it's like there's this really convoluted manuscript and the difference between distilling it into an easy summary is huge. So I do think that there might be something here, sorry, specifically for manuscripts. But I guess again, we MVP it and then see how it all plays out. And then that's the beauty of MVPing it is we can just have the community be like, oh yeah, this thing sucks, or we can say, hey, this thing sucks, or wait, this thing is really useful. So we can just give it a shot.
It'd be really cool, Jeff, if you guys could do like when you're MVPing this to do like user studies. So if you have a layperson you're talking to and they want to see a paper, generate them the summary for them like on the spot and just get their thumbs up, thumbs down, whether it's useful. And if we could do that for like each of these user groups, it'd give us a really good idea of if it's actually worth like putting into the product or not.
Another idea here where I think this could be pretty useful is there was this paper published a while ago around like having lay people participate in scientific prediction markets. So this is just for like social sciences, but basically they would just grab random people with like no scientific background, read them like a one paragraph summary of what this social science paper was about, and include basically effect sizes with the summary. And just lay people with like no background whatsoever were able to predict replication at like a greater than 50% accuracy. So I think combined with another kind of like value driving feature, this could be really powerful. But yeah, I think there's still some product work to figure out there.
Okay.
I think that was like a PNAS paper or something, right? Right, Pat? I think I saw that. It was back in like 2015 or something, where they gave everyone like $100 and said, "Hey, you guys go and do some prediction markets and see how it plays out." Yeah, Dami.
Yeah, I think that's not too hard to build, right? Maybe in a week or so we can have these 100 papers, and then we summarize them in different ways, like I mentioned earlier. Like for laymen and just bullet points, some methods, or just result impact. Maybe 5 to 10 scenario. Each of them we generate say 3, 5 samples, and then we have a set of like 1,000 or so, summary out of these 100 papers, and then we can A/B test and do whatever we want to see how this work. The quality of it, different perspective of different user groups. I guess that will do a lot already. I mean, we can just pull all this. We can put it in our a new Airtable, especially for that. So it's all about data, and then have a form where people can just up and down, thumbs up, thumbs down, and then yeah, I guess in 1 month or two we'll have feedback on this.
Yeah, Dami, this fits like really well into like a similar structure of thinking for like the pre-registration of when the editors give feedback on like the AI review versus the human review, having like a kind of curation mechanism there, and then taking the the reputation score from ResearchHub to help weight the opinions of those like differently. So, Dami, can we add this into like the roadmap on Slack for some of this, and then we can figure out like the most feasible way to make this happen given like limited time.
Sure. Or write it down.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, yeah, good to know. So we'll get this MVP'd and see if it comes to, it ends up being beneficial or what are the outputs of this, and then we'll go from there. We do have one question here from the chat, which is, hi everyone, have you inquired about uploading files, Microsoft Excel, Word doc, and others to ResearchHub? And I think this might be within the context of like the notebook. So maybe feeding these things into the notebook and having them be publishable at some point. So yeah, Tyler, do you have any thoughts? I know you're working closely on the notebook here.
Yeah, we're actually going to start like we're, doing all these UI revamps in Q1. And so one of the things that we're trying to revamp is the notebook. So I can definitely keep this in mind. And I thought about it too. Like academics, they're going to write mostly in the thing that's most useful for them. So if the notebook isn't like, next generation perfect, they're probably going to write in Microsoft Word. So making sure that you're able to upload Word documents, that's pretty important. So it's a really good point.
Yeah, perfect. And then I know, Tyler, I had a conversation one time with like one of the dudes at CurveNote, and he was talking about like they use something called Mist, which is I think some like just language or protocol or something like that, where it allows them to be able to import and export a bunch of different documents. So like PDFs, PowerPoint, Word docs, Excel. And so I think in CurveNote, you can either upload those in and get them kind of plugged in, or you can export them out of CurveNote into those file formats. So either which way you spin it would work.
Awesome. Mist was the name, Jeff?
I think so. Maybe like MYST. I don't know if anyone wants in the chat wants to like fact check, but I think it's like MYST.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. So I think that's it from what I'm seeing from like the Q&A. Does anyone else have anything and any like specific case by case things for like, support? Please keep that to the support tickets. That's just to make sure that we have like everything documented and formally kind of, characterized on our side. Yeah, and any other questions or thoughts regarding like the idea of engaging like the community? And then I'll make kind of one more point after this around some of the direction I think of marketing for the year. But yeah, anything else around like AI and LLMs and summarizing and things for the community that we want to talk about?
Just a thank you for always MVPing this stuff. It's like super helpful because basically you guys get to test it and like see what's useful for us to build and then give us this like initial version to scaffold off of. So yeah, having the community is pretty insane. And thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys. I mean, I see on the back end like how much like effort and work you guys are always doing. And so anyway, we can try to push something along without having to like get you guys like the developer burden added on. We'll definitely do that as much as we can, get something going. If the community loves it, that's a signal. Okay, cool. So last thing here is going to be just like a little bit of content around like the marketing team. So the marketing team has been working on a tremendous amount of things over the last couple months. We had a lot of content come out from SciCon, as you guys have seen some of those really, really high quality videos, which I think comes off really well portraying our image. We've had a few other nice pieces of content. We had the video go live through the On-Chain Daily with Base, which garnered a lot of attention. So on Zora, I think there was probably something close to 20,000 mints that happened for that particular video. So a lot of work that went into those things. And going into 2025, there's going to be a lot more. And so one big thing people can look forward to is, and one of the strengths I think of our community is like the people, right? We have like a tremendously wonderful group of people that are really intelligent. And so we also feel like what ResearchHub does is it also helps like scientists' lives in some ways. And I think these are not captured very well, just, going through like our Discord or something like that. So we're going to have Michael, who's on the team working on testimonials. So he'll be, and already has interviewed a handful of people. And I think there's about 15 or so people lined up, or 20 people that are going to give like video testimonials of how ResearchHub has impacted their life as a scientist. There'll be kind of a merch store that will go live on the foundation website, hopefully here in Q1 2025. So we're gonna, we get a lot of feedback on, hey, we want some ResearchHub shirts. Like those shirts look sick. Like we want some of those too. So a merch store to go live. We'll have a resources section on the website, which will house a lot more of like walkthroughs and informational videos, and just generally like resources, policies, AI policies, all that jazz will be in one centralized place. Hosting and attending a lot more spaces. So I know even, Pat, we were talking that, every couple weeks having just like a semi more casual kind of like the Ben Horowitz, Mark Andreessen, interview chat style thing between you and Johnny is something that is going to get implemented soon, as well as some events. So we have a whole breakdown of various scientific conferences that we're going to want to attend, as well as different crypto conferences. We just had a call recently about this. So getting ourselves out there in front of the crypto crowd. And, one thing I wanted to mention this, and one of the feedbacks we get a lot is, getting ourselves out there a little bit more. And I think that, I've been thinking about this quite a bit, and a lot of the perception around DeSci stems from what people put out there to the audience. And so if what's out there to the audience is a bunch of, lower quality projects, or, if that's the signal that's being put out there and that's what the community and people are digesting, then that's going to be their perception of what our ecosystem is. And so it's actually even more important for us to, I think, step up in this realm, because we can set the precedent and tone for what our industry is. And so because of that, I want to definitely sink a ton more effort and resources into getting ResearchHub specifically to go to all these crypto venues, non-crypto venues, conferences, events, and just kind of, sticking our flag in there to say, hey, hold on, DeSci is legitimate and we're doing good work here.
Jeff, I love that. I think that's super, super worthwhile to do. And you're right, because we have like a good middle ground between the kind of crypto audience and like these newer tools that are building that can help science, and then the actual science audience who has like really good, noble goals in mind. So us being that middle ground of keeping like both things optimized, I think is pretty awesome.
Yeah, and I think so. And we can we're doing the best we can, I think, within our community as people flow to us. But I think we also need to just get our image out there across the board, because it also helps, I think, as a seesaw, counterbalance like some of the other lower quality things that rightfully so people are, complaining about or calling out publicly.
Agreed.
Okay. So yeah, so that's kind of some of the highlights on like the marketing side of
Jeff.
things. And yeah, go for it.
Will this entail having our own events as well?
It's a good question. So it is definitely a big time sink from like our own events. And I think if we're going to lean into that more, we're going to need to get more people like to help specifically with that. I think one way we can do it where we can still reach these audiences are like through like Twitter Spaces. I think those things will work really well. Going to just different events, like for example, there's like JPM that's happening over here, and I'm really close to it. So I'm actually going to pit stop at a few networking events. I'm going to attend the Future House one tomorrow evening, like things like that, where like we can just get to other people's events, I think, and like, have speaking slots and workshops would go a long way. And then we keep SciCon as our big dedicated event. And I think we get a lot of eyeballs from that.
So the reason I bring this up, not because I've thought about it a lot or whatever, but when you go to like ETH Denver, for example, there's a big difference between companies that have displays at like the main events type things, or companies that have events, right? So like you get like a little restaurant or a little bar or whatever, and it's like 3 to 4 hours. You get a bunch of people to come, you have your merch, everything. There's like, I don't know how quite to explain it, but there's like a sense of legitimacy that comes with like having a actual place where actual people who are interested in at like a bigger event come to, that isn't quite the same as just having like, having general visibility. So I understand like there's like a lot of things with time that we have to consider and everything, but that's worth highlighting, I think.
Yeah, that's a good point, Edwin. Like I kind of like these like, yeah, I went to Astera Institute's event a couple weeks ago just before SciCon, and it was in like some like kind of restaurant bar in Berkeley, and there was like, I don't know, maybe like 60, 70 people that showed up, and it was like a really good time. And it wasn't like, they had like really casual like, name tags for people, and then everyone just kind of scattered and like chatted with each other and networked and things like that. So I think those are a lot lower hanging fruit than like an event when I'm thinking of like a SciCon or SciCon equivalent.
Oh yeah, no, nothing like that. Just like at an ETH Denver, there will be like it's all over the place with restaurants, right? And there's like one DeSci thing, and a bunch of people who are interested. I'm not saying we should do ETH Denver, but there are other probably events like that where we could just like rent out a bar for a few hours, and then it'll be a matter of marketing. But people want DeSci, especially at these events.
Yeah, I think we can most certainly do something like of that magnitude. And so Edwin, let's like sync with me, you, and also Johnny, so that we get like some actionable things that come out of this, because I think you're right. We can get some low-hanging fruit here and then also get the name out at some of these bigger events like ETH Denver, really Token 2049, have our own event, things like that. Okay, cool. So we're at the top of the hour. So this was a good conversation. I hope everybody had a good, relaxing New Year's. We have a lot on the horizon for 2025. It's going to be another roller coaster of a year. So we're glad that everyone here is along for the ride with us. So yeah, really appreciate it. And we'll see you every 2 weeks. We're going to be doing these community calls. So we'll kind of expect some product notes that come out every 2 weeks, but also we'll have the community calls as well too. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
See ya.